The rain fell in a slow, relentless drizzle, the kind that didn't storm or rage but seeped into everything, soaking through fabric, skin, bone. It turned the cemetery paths into dark veins of mud and pressed the smell of wet earth and dying flowers into the air so thick it felt almost alive. She knelt before the grave without caring that her knees sank into the cold ground, that the hem of her coat was already ruined. None of it mattered anymore. Pain had simplified her world down to one constant ache, and everything else was just background noise. The headstone stood silent and indifferent, its polished surface streaked with rain. His name was carved deep into the marble, each letter sharp and unforgiving, as if the stone itself wanted to make sure she never forgot. She reached out with trembling fingers and traced the grooves, her touch slow, reverent. 6 months. 6 months since they told her he was dead. 6 months since the explosion, since the rushed phone call in the middle of the night, since the men in dark coats and lowered voices stood in her living room and shattered her life with practiced efficiency. She pressed her forehead to the stone, eyes closing as the rain slid down her lashes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the drops hitting the umbrella she'd abandoned beside her. The words tasted old, worn thin from repetition. "I'm so sorry." The silence answered her. Not true silence, never that. The distant hum of the city bled through the iron gates, muffled but persistent. Somewhere a crow cawed. Leaves rustled. The world went on, uncaring. The quiet felt too loud, pressing in on her chest until breathing became something she had to consciously remember to do. She had loved him in ways she didn't know how to explain. Not the safe kind of love, not the gentle kind people talked about like it was a virtue. Hers had been fierce and consuming and terrifying, wrapped in danger and promises whispered in the dark. He had been a man the world feared, a man whose name carried weight and consequence, but to her he had been warmth and certainty. Protection. Home. Now he was a name on a stone. She stared at the dates beneath his name, her vision blurring until the numbers swam together. It felt wrong that his entire existence could be reduced to a dash between 2 years. Wrong that the man who had once commanded rooms with a glance, who had bent the city around his will, lay beneath the ground while she still breathed. "I should have been there," she said, the confession slipping out before she could stop it. Her hands curled into fists against the marble. "I should have died with you." The thought didn't scare her. It never had. In the weeks after his death, it had followed her everywhere, a quiet companion that sat beside her in the dark. She had replayed the night over and over, imagining different endings, imagining being at his side, imagining fire and noise and the end coming together instead of alone in a bed that still smelled like him. "I was a coward," she continued, tears mixing with rain as they fell onto the stone. "If I'd been braver, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be standing in front of a grave pretending to live." Because that was all she did now. Pretend. She woke up, ate when she remembered, went through the motions people expected. But something essential had stopped when he died. The part of her that hoped. The part that planned. She existed in a state of pause, waiting for a life that would never resume. A sudden chill crawled up her spine, sharp and instinctive. She inhaled slowly, the air carrying something beneath the damp rot of flowers, something familiar, expensive, dark. Her heart stuttered. No, she told herself immediately. Grief. Memory. Her mind was cruel like that, dragging his presence into every shadow, every shift of wind. She had smelled him in crowded streets, in empty rooms, in dreams that left her gasping awake. It meant nothing. Still, she lifted her head and glanced toward the line of trees at the edge of the cemetery. The rain blurred everything into gray shapes and wavering shadows. For a brief, irrational moment, she felt watched, not threatened, not hunted, just seen. Her pulse quickened, and she almost laughed at herself. "You're gone," she murmured, more firmly now, as if saying it enough times might make it true. "You're really gone." She leaned forward once more, pressing her lips to her fingers and then to the stone, a private ritual no one else witnessed. "I loved you," she said softly. "I still do. I don't know how to stop." The rain answered her, steady and unfeeling. Somewhere behind her, unseen and unacknowledged, a presence lingered in the shadows, unmoving, watching, waiting. And she rose from the ground without ever knowing that the grave she cried over had never held the man she mourned, that the silence she believed in was a lie, and that the eyes following her every breath were very much alive. He had not entered her life gently. There was no slow curiosity or polite distance. He arrived like a storm that did not ask permission. Before him, her world had been small and predictable. Long shifts, empty rooms, quiet nights where survival was the only goal. She had learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to move without being noticed, how to keep her head down and her heart guarded. Then one night everything cracked. She remembered the weight of exhaustion in her body, the ache in her feet, the way her mind had been half somewhere else when she walked straight into him. Solid, unmoving, warm. The impact had knocked the breath from her lungs. And before panic could rise, before apologies could spill, hands caught her. Strong, fast, certain. Not the fumbling grip of a stranger, but the kind of touch that said control without effort. She had looked up, and the world had narrowed to his face. Dark eyes. Not cruel. Not kind. Just deep. The kind that did not look at people so much as through them. As if every truth lived on the surface, and he could read it at will. For a moment neither of them spoke, and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition without reason. From that night forward nothing was ever simple again. He did not chase her like men in stories. He did not pretend to be harmless. He watched. He waited. He appeared exactly when he intended to. There was always a car where there should not have been one. A presence just behind her shoulder. A voice low and steady asking if she had eaten. If she was warm. If anyone had bothered her. At first it frightened her. The certainty of him. The way he made decisions, as if the world bent naturally around his will. But slowly fear blurred into something else. Safety. With him, the streets felt quieter. The nights less sharp. The world seemed to step aside. Doors opened. Voices lowered. Eyes turned away. She did not know his name at first. Only that people reacted to him. Men stiffened. Women went silent. Space was made. When she finally learned who he was. What he ruled. What he was capable of. It should have sent her running. Instead, she stayed. Because with her, he was different. Not softer. Not gentler. But focused. His attention was absolute. Unnerving. Intimate. When he looked at her, it felt like being chosen. As if out of an entire city. Out of all the noise and power and violence. He had decided she mattered. He never lied about what he was. Never pretended his world was clean. He warned her more than once. Told her that loving him came with shadows. With danger. With consequences. She told herself she understood. But understanding is easy when danger is theoretical. What she knew was this. He remembered everything. The way she took her coffee. The songs she hummed without realizing. The scar on her knee from a childhood fall. He listened when she spoke. Really listened. As if her words carried weight. And when he touched her, there was devotion in it. A quiet reverence that made her feel fragile and powerful all at once. He protected her without asking. Without explaining. Without ever making it sound optional. If a man stared too long, he noticed. If she walked home tired, he knew. If she was afraid, he was already there. Looking back now, she could see the cage forming. Bar by bar. Soft and invisible. Built from concern and attention and unspoken rules. But at the time, it felt like love. The kind of love that consumes. That claims. That does not leave room for doubt. She had not fallen slowly. She had fallen completely. And kneeling at his grave now. 6 months after the world declared him gone. She understood the truth she had avoided. She had never loved him safely. She had loved him the way one loves fire, knowing it burns, knowing it destroys, but unable to step away from the warmth. And if given the chance again, if time rewound itself, if the night rewrote its ending, she knew she would still walk into him, still lift her eyes, still choose the man who would one day teach her. That love powerful enough to protect is also powerful enough to destroy, even from beyond the grave. The last time she heard his voice, the city was still alive outside her window. Traffic murmured below. Lights blinked on across distant buildings. Everything looked ordinary enough to lie. His name lit up her phone, and her chest had eased without thinking, as if his presence alone kept the world in balance. "I will not be long," he had said, his voice calm, steady, almost gentle. "A small meeting. Then I am coming home." She remembered smiling at the word home. Remembered teasing him for pretending his life could ever be simple. He had laughed softly, the sound warm and familiar, and promised her dinner, promised safety, promised tomorrow. 2 hours later, the city screamed. The first sign was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, hollow pause that presses against the ears before disaster. Her phone stopped responding. Messages sent but never delivered. Calls that rang into nothing. Unease turned into fear. Fear sharpened into something closer to dread. She stood by the window waiting, watching headlights pass, counting the minutes with a heartbeat that would not slow. Then the knock came. Not hurried, not frantic, measured, controlled. When she opened the door, his men stood there. Dark coats, rain, damp hair, eyes lowered. They did not step inside until she moved back, as if even in grief there were rules. "He is gone," one of them said quietly. The warehouse exploded. He was inside. The words did not land at first. They hovered in the air, meaningless. Foreign. Gone did not fit him. Dead did not belong to him. She laughed then. A small broken sound. Told them they were wrong. Told them he could not be dead. He did not make promises he could not keep. They did not argue. They simply handed her papers. Official stamps. Signatures. A folded jacket still smelling faintly of smoke, and something darker. The world tipped. She slid down the wall without feeling her legs give way. The floor was cold. The air too thin. Every breath felt stolen. They spoke around her. Words like remains. Confirmation. Security footage. Nothing left to recover. Nothing left. The funeral was private. Too private. No body. No open casket. Just a closed stone and men who did not cry. She stood beside the grave, unable to scream. Unable to collapse. Because part of her still waited for him to arrive late. To step out of a black car, irritated by the inconvenience of his own funeral. He did not come. In the weeks that followed, the city changed. Not visibly, but in subtle ways. Certain places went quiet. Certain men vanished. Power shifted like a tide pulling back. She received money she never touched. Protection she never asked for. Silence where his voice used to be. At night she replayed every moment. Every word. Searching for cracks. For warnings. For signs she had missed. She remembered the way he had held her face the night before. The way his thumb had brushed her cheek. As if memorizing it. She remembered how long the kiss had lasted. Longer than usual. Desperate almost. What she did not remember was him saying goodbye. Grief hollowed her out slowly. Methodically. Days blurred. Meals were forgotten. Laughter became something other people did. She existed in fragments. Breathing without purpose. Waking without meaning. Sometimes she thought she heard him. Footsteps in the hall. A voice behind her. The soft click of a door closing. She told herself it was madness, told herself love leaves echoes. But there were moments, too precise, too timely. Doors unlocked when she fumbled. Danger passed her by without explanation. Eyes turned away at exactly the right time. She never connected the dots. She believed the lie because believing was easier than hoping. And hope was dangerous, because hope would have destroyed her. So she learned how to mourn a man who was not truly gone. How to survive the death of someone who was still breathing somewhere in the dark. And on the night, she finally whispered his name into the empty room and begged him to forgive her for living. He was alive, listening, and planning the moment he would step out of the shadows and shatter her world all over again. 6 months after his death, the world had learned how to move without him. She had not. The city kept breathing. Cars still filled the streets. Restaurants stayed loud. People laughed without guilt. And she moved through it all like a ghost. Every morning, she woke with the same mistake. For one soft, unguarded second, she forgot. Then the weight returned. Crushing. Absolute. She stopped counting days because numbers implied an end. And grief had none. What she did notice were the changes. Small at first. Easy to explain away. A stranger stepping between her and a shouting man on the train. A car slowing too long at a crosswalk so she could pass. A feeling of being guided through crowds without knowing how. She told herself it was coincidence, that the city was not cruel all the time. Then came the nights. She would wake suddenly, heart racing, convinced someone had said her name. The apartment would be silent, unchanged, yet the air felt disturbed, as if something had just moved through it. She began locking her doors twice, then 3 times, checking windows, counting steps from bedroom to kitchen. Survival habits she had not used since the early days of knowing him. Once she found flowers outside her. No card, no delivery notice. Just fresh blooms arranged the way he used to prefer. Dark colors, restrained, expensive. She left them in the hallway, her hands shaking, her mind screaming that grief was inventing comfort. At work things changed too. Men who once stared too long suddenly avoided her. A supervisor who raised his voice was transferred without explanation. When she walked home late, a black car appeared on the street. Never close enough to be obvious. Never far enough to feel accidental. She told herself it was paranoia. That loss sharpens fear. That love does not return from the dead. But the feeling persisted. Not hunted. Not threatened. Protected. That was what unsettled her most. Protection without a source. Safety without explanation. Like a shadow standing between her and harm. One evening, she almost tested it. A man followed her for half a block. Close enough that she could hear his steps. Her pulse spiked. Memories rushing back. The way his hand would tighten on her waist when danger neared. She slowed deliberately, bracing herself. The footsteps stopped. A car door opened. Closed. Voices murmured too low to understand. When she turned, the street was empty. She stood there shaking, tears stinging her eyes, because fear had mixed with something far worse. Hope. She began noticing the pattern then. The timing. The precision. Danger never quite reached her. Misfortune curved away at the last moment, as if guided by an unseen hand. And sometimes, when she stood near glass or dark windows, she thought she caught movement behind her reflection. A shape. Still. Watching. She never turned fast enough. At the cemetery, she felt it strongest. That awareness. That quiet pressure between breaths. She would whisper to the stone. Tell him about her days. About the way the world felt wrong without him. And each time she left, she felt something follow her to the gates. Then stop. as if respecting an invisible boundary. At night, she dreamed of him standing just beyond reach, close enough to feel his warmth, too far to touch. He never spoke. He only watched. Her grief shifted then, changed shape. It became something restless, uneasy, as if mourning was no longer the right word. She was not alone. She had never been alone. Someone knew her routines, her fears, the moment she was weakest. Someone was making sure she survived. And deep down, beneath the denial and logic and terror, she knew, if the dead could watch the living, this is what it would feel like. But she was not ready to accept the truth, because accepting it would mean believing that love this intense did not end with death. And that was far more terrifying than loss. The message arrived at night, when the city outside her window had gone quiet. Not silent, just waiting. Her phone vibrated once on the table. Soft, almost polite. She ignored it at first. Her body had learned to flinch at sudden sounds. Loss had trained her nerves to expect bad news. The screen lit again. Insistent this time. Unknown number. Her throat tightened. She told herself not to open it. Told herself this was how panic started. With curiosity dressed as instinct. She picked up the phone anyway. You should not be out alone after dark. Her breath caught. The words were simple. Ordinary. But something about them slid under her skin. She typed back before she could stop herself. Who is this? The reply came immediately, as if the sender had been waiting for her touch. Someone who cares whether you make it home. Her fingers went cold. That phrase, the cadence, the concern. It felt too familiar. This is not funny. She typed. Please stop. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I am not joking. Lock your door. Do not open it for anyone. Her heart began to race. She stood from the couch and crossed the apartment, checking the deadbolt, then the window, then the hallway. Whoever this was, they knew her timing. How did you get this number? The pause this time was longer, long enough for fear to bloom. Then the phone vibrated again. You never changed it. I told you not to. But you did not listen. Her knees weakened. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen as if it might burn. No. She whispered. No. She typed with shaking hands. This is sick. Do not do this to me. Another pause. He was choosing his words. She felt it. I would never hurt you. Tears blurred her vision. That sentence, that exact phrasing. He had said it countless times. In cars. In hallways. In bed when the world outside felt too sharp. Her chest felt tight, as if something inside her was trying to break free. Say my name. She typed. If this is really you. Say my name. The phone stayed silent. Seconds stretched, each one cutting deeper. Then the screen lit. You always needed proof. Am I? Her name looked wrong there. Too alive. Too present. She dropped the phone as if it had shocked her. It bounced once on the mattress, still glowing. Her breath came fast. Too fast. The room spun. This is not real. She told herself. This is grief. This is madness. She picked the phone back up. You are dead. The reply came slower this time. Heavy. No. Her hands trembled. Her vision tunneled. Then why did I bury you? Because if you knew the truth, they would have taken you from me. The words felt deliberate. Measured. Controlled. Who is they? People who would enjoy hurting you. People who would use your pain to break me. She pressed her palm to her mouth, stifling a sound that was not quite a sob. You watched me. She typed. You let me cry at your grave. Another pause. Longer than before. Yes. That single word crushed her. I watched. Because it was the only way to keep you breathing. Her chest burned. Anger flared through the fear. Hot and sharp. You let me think you were gone. You let me die every day. I died too. He wrote. Every time you did. She shook her head. Tears falling freely now. Prove it. She demanded. Prove you are real. The reply came with cruel certainty. Look outside. Her body froze. Slowly. Terrified of what she might see. She crossed the room and pulled back the curtain. A black car sat across the street. Engine running. Lights off. Her phone vibrated one last time. You are not alone. You never were. I am closer than you think. She backed away from the window. Heart pounding. Mind unraveling. Love did not return from the dead. But something had. And it knew her better than anyone alive. The truth did not arrive all at once. It seeped in slowly. Like water finding cracks in stone. She did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed with the phone in her hands, staring at the dark screen, waiting for it to breathe again. It did not. Morning came quietly, cruel in its normalcy. Sunlight touched the walls. Birds moved outside. The world behaved as if nothing impossible had happened. But everything had. Her heart felt wrong inside her chest. Too tight. Too fast. Every thought spiraled back to the same place. He was alive. The idea should have filled her with relief. With joy. With gratitude. Instead, it tasted like betrayal. She replayed every memory of the past 6 months. Every tear. Every night on the floor. Every whispered apology at his grave. And behind each moment, she now imagined eyes. Watching. Her stomach turned. The knock came in the afternoon. Not loud. Not rushed. Measured. The kind of knock that assumed the door would open. She did not want to answer. But something in her already knew who stood on the other side. When she opened the door, the man did not introduce himself. He did not need to. He wore a dark coat. His posture disciplined. His expression respectful but firm. He said her name softly, as if it were something fragile. She let him inside. He did not sit until she did not speak until she looked at him. He told her everything he was allowed to tell, and nothing more. That the death was staged. That the explosion was real, but the body was not his. That enemies had waited years for a weakness. And she had been that weakness. Not because she was weak, but because she mattered. They would have taken her, broken her, used her pain to dismantle the man they hated. So he had died instead. On paper. In public. In the eyes of the world. And lived in the shadows. Watching. Planning. Killing quietly when necessary. She felt sick. She asked why no one told her. Why she had been allowed to rot in grief. The man did not flinch. He said because she would not have survived knowing. Her love would have shown. Her grief had been convincing. Too convincing. She laughed then. A hollow sound. Because even her suffering had been weaponized. When the man left, he gave her a phone. Different from her own. Already charged. One contact saved. Just one letter. She held it like it might explode. That night, she stood at the window again. Looking down at the street. At the same black car. Still there. Her phone vibrated. You know now. She swallowed hard. You watched me break. Yes. Why? Because I had no choice. And because if I had come to you, you would have run into danger for me. She closed her eyes. I would have chosen you. I know. That is why I stayed away. Her chest burned, love and fury twisting together. You took my choice. I gave it back. Nah. She opened her eyes. Where are you? Close. The word echoed inside her. Heavy. Loaded. The truth settled then. Fully. Finally. The grave had never held him. The silence had been a lie. And the man she loved had never stopped loving her. He had simply loved her from the dark. And the most terrifying part was this. She was no longer sure if she wanted him to step into the light. He watched her the way one watches fire. With respect. With hunger. With fear of what it could do if left unchecked. From the car across the street. From the shadowed corner of a building. From places she would never think to look. He learned her again. The new her. The quieter steps. The way grief bent her shoulders. The way she paused before doors as if bracing for loss. Every morning, he counted her breaths from afar. Every night he stayed awake until her lights went dark. He never crossed the line. Never stepped into her space. Never allowed himself the comfort of her voice. Because wanting her was easy. Protecting her was instinct. But touching her again would destroy the careful balance he had built. She did not know how close he came to breaking. On the nights she cried. On the nights she stood at the window whispering his name. On the nights she curled into herself as if the world had grown too sharp. He clenched his fists, ground his teeth, and reminded himself that pain was the price of her survival. He had ordered men killed for less, ended lives with clean precision, without regret, but resisting her. That was the hardest thing he had ever done. He saw everything. The man who followed her too long. The stranger who asked the wrong questions. The subtle shifts in the city that told him danger was moving closer. Each time he intervened quietly, efficiently, without her ever knowing how close harm had come. When she laughed once at a street performer, the sound caught in his chest, surprised him with its force. It had been months since he heard that sound. Months since he allowed himself hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope made men careless. He could not afford careless. At night, he stood in rooms filled with maps and names. Faces circled. Lines drawn. Plans layered over plans. All of it for one purpose. Her. He told himself this was love. That love justified everything. The watching. The control. The lies. And yet, there were moments, rare and brutal, when he wondered if he was saving her, or slowly stealing something from her that could never be returned. Her freedom, her peace, her ability to exist without him. He pushed the thought away every time, because the alternative was unbearable. The alternative was imagining her broken, bleeding, screaming his name while his enemies smiled. He would burn the city before allowing that future. So he stayed in the dark, a ghost with a heartbeat, a shadow with teeth, close enough to reach her in seconds, far enough to let her believe she was alone. When she finally began to suspect, when her eyes lingered too long on reflections, when her steps slowed as if she felt him behind her, he almost smiled. Not because he wanted her afraid, but because it meant she was alive, aware. And awareness was the first step toward the truth. Soon, he promised himself, soon I will step out of the shadows. Not yet. Not until the world is safe enough to survive my return. Until then, he would watch. He would wait. Because loving her meant enduring her hatred, her anger, her eventual demand for answers. And he would take it all. Every word. Every accusation. Every tear. As long as she kept breathing. As long as she kept walking through the city. As long as she remained untouched. That was the bargain he had made with the darkness. And he never broke his promises. The city began to change its posture. Not openly. Not in ways the news would notice. But in the spaces between moments. She felt it first in the way men started watching again. Not staring. Measuring. The quiet protection that had followed her for months sharpened into something tense. Edges appeared. Cars parked longer than usual. Voices cut off when she passed. The air felt loaded. Like a held breath before a scream. Her phone stayed silent. Too silent. That frightened her more than the messages. She stopped sleeping. Every sound pulled her awake. Every shadow felt deliberate. When she left her building one morning, a man stood too close. Close enough that instinct screamed. Close enough that fear burned. She never saw what happened behind her. Only heard footsteps. A sharp murmur. Then the man was gone. Vanished. Her knees shook. Her hands trembled. And for the first time she understood. The danger was no longer hypothetical. That night the knock came. Not at her door, but inside her phone. You need to pack. Nah. She stared at the screen. Anger flared hot and sudden. I am not running again. The response came immediately. This is not running. This is surviving. She laughed. Bitter. You do not get to decide that anymore. A pause. Longer than usual. Then. They are closer than I expected. Her breath caught. Who? You do not need names. You need to move. Another message followed. I am coming for you. But until then you must trust me. Trust. The word hurt. Minutes later her building filled with movement. Quiet. Efficient. Men she had never seen, but somehow recognized. They did not ask. They did not explain. They guided her. Shielded her. Moved her through hallways and elevators like she was fragile cargo. She realized then that this had always been the plan. The apartment. The routines. The watchers. All of it had been a waiting room. The car ride was silent. Windows dark. City lights blurring past. She pressed her forehead to the glass. Trying to remember the last time, her life felt like it belonged to her. When they stopped, she did not recognize the place. Hi. Isolated. Too clean. A safe house. Though no one used the word. Inside everything was prepared. Clothes. Food. A room that did not feel like hers. It felt borrowed. She sat on the edge of the bed. Heart pounding. Mind racing. This is a prison. She whispered. Her phone vibrated. I know. That answer broke something in her. You said I had a choice. You do. But this moment is not about freedom. It is about keeping you alive long enough to choose. She clenched the phone. If you do not come to me, if you keep hiding, I will leave. I will walk straight into whatever danger you are afraid of. Silence. Then, do not test me. The words were not angry. They were terrified. That scared her more than any threat. Outside the windows, the city glittered. Beautiful. Indifferent. Somewhere out, their enemies were moving. Plans unfolding. Violence coiling closer. And somewhere closer than she could see. The man she loved was deciding how much blood he would spill. How many rules he would break. All for her. She lay back on the unfamiliar bed. Staring at the ceiling. The war had finally surfaced. Not with explosions or headlines, but with control tightening around her life. And she understood now. The next time she saw him, it would not be from a grave. It would be from the center of the storm. She felt him before she saw him. The air changed. The room tightened. Every instinct she had learned from loving danger rose at once. The guards outside the door straightened. Not in alarm. In respect. Her heart began to pound so hard it hurt. Then the door opened. He stood there, alive. Not a ghost, not a shadow, not a memory stitched together by grief. Him, taller than she remembered, lean harder edged by violence and exhaustion. His hair slightly longer, his eyes darker, older, changed. For a moment, neither of them moved. The space between them felt unreal, charged, fragile. She forgot how to breathe. 6 months of mourning crashed into one heartbeat. Her hands curled into fists. Her legs shook. Tears burned but did not fall. "You are alive," she said. The words felt stupid, small. He took one step forward, then stopped, as if crossing the rest of the distance required permission. Yes. His voice. That voice. It broke something in her. She laughed. A sharp, broken sound that surprised them both. "You watched me bury you," she said. "You watched me fall apart." He did not deny it. Yes. The word landed like a blow. Rage surged. Hot, blinding. She crossed the room in 3 steps and hit his chest. Not hard. Not soft. Enough to feel his heartbeat beneath her palm. "You let me believe you were gone. You let me die every day." His hands hovered near her arms. Not touching. "I did. And it was the only way to keep you alive." Alive. She spat. "I stopped living." His jaw tightened. Pain flickered across his face. "I know." She pushed him again. Harder this time. "You do not get to decide that. You do not get to choose my suffering." His voice dropped. Raw. "I would choose your suffering over your death every time." The truth of it hung heavy between them. She stared at him. Really looked. The blood on his knuckles. The tension coiled in his body. The exhaustion he could no longer hide. "How many?" she asked quietly. His eyes never left hers. "Enough." The answer terrified her. And still, she did not step away. "You became a monster for me. I always was one. You just gave me something worth protecting." Her chest ached. "Say it," she demanded. "Say why you stayed away." "Because if I came to you, I would never leave again. And that would have gotten you killed." Silence swallowed the room. He finally reached for her. Slow. Careful. His fingers brushed her wrist. Electric. "I loved you enough to let you hate me." Tears spilled then. Unstoppable. "I loved you enough to bury you," she whispered. He closed his eyes. Just for a second. "I know." She pulled her hand from his grasp. "This ends now. No more shadows. No more watching. No more lies." He met her gaze. "Fear naked and real. If I step fully into your life again, there is no safety without control. Then tell me the truth. All of it. Or lose me forever." He inhaled slowly. "You are my weakness. My reason. My greatest risk. And my only mercy." She nodded. "Then understand this," she said. "If I stay knowing who you are." He stepped closer. So close she could feel his breath. "And if you leave, I will walk away alive. Not watched. Not protected. Free." The words cost him everything. "You have my word." She searched his face. The man. The monster. The love she had never escaped. Then she leaned into him. Forehead to chest. "I am not ready to forgive you. I am not asking for forgiveness." His arms came around her. Tight. Desperate. "I am asking for the chance to be hated in the light, instead of loved from the dark." Outside, the city waited, and the grave that never held him was finally silent. The city did not celebrate their survival. It simply adjusted. Traffic flowed. Lights burned. Power shifted quietly beneath glass towers and concrete streets. She stood at the window alone before dawn, watching the sky soften from black to gray, feeling the weight of everything she now knew. He had slept in the other room, not because he was unwelcome, but because she needed space to decide who she was becoming. For the first time since his death, since his return, the choice was hers. Stay or walk away. He had meant it. She could feel the truth of that promise like a blade pressed gently against her throat. Freedom offered by a man who had never believed in it. She tried to imagine leaving. A small apartment in a nameless city. A job that did not come with guards. A life without shadows, watching from corners. The thought felt peaceful and empty. When he woke, she did not turn. She felt him behind her. Careful. Waiting. If I go, she said quietly, I want to go alive. Not followed. Not protected. Not remembered. He did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. Controlled. Breaking beneath the restraint. If you walk away, I will disappear from your life. Not a message. Not a shadow. Not a name. The words cost him something. She heard it. And if I stay. He moved closer, but did not touch. Then nothing changes. I will still be dangerous. Still feared. Still willing to destroy anyone who threatens what is mine. She turned then, looked at him fully in the new light. And you will tell me the truth. Every time. Even when it is ugly. Yes. No more cages built from silence. Yes. She searched his face. The monster. The man. The boy who had learned too early that love was leverage. She stepped toward him. Slow. Deliberate. I will not be hidden. I will not be lied to. And I will not be protected from my own choices. He nodded. If you stay knowing this world will never be safe. She placed her palm over his heart. Felt it race. I stopped needing safe a long time ago. He exhaled, shuddering, as if he had been holding his breath since the night he died. Then I will stand beside you. Not above. Not behind. They held each other as the city woke. Not in relief, but in acceptance. The war outside would continue. Threats would rise. Blood would stain the streets where power was challenged. This was not an ending that promised peace. It promised honesty. Weeks later, she returned to the cemetery. Alone. The grave still stood. Cold and false. She placed no flowers. Said no apologies. That stone marked the man she thought she lost. Not the one who lived. She walked away without looking back. That night, she stood beside him at the windows of the penthouse. The city glowing beneath them. Danger humming like a living thing. His arm around her. Not tight. Not possessive. Present. She understood the truth then. Cages are not always locked from the outside. Sometimes they are chosen. Sometimes they are built from devotion. From fear. From love powerful enough to survive death. She had not escaped the darkness. She had stepped into it willingly. And closed the door herself.